Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would also ask to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank my colleague from Georgia, Senator Chambliss, for his incredible leadership on the Intelligence Committee, on the Armed Services Committee, and his deep commitment to ensuring that our country remains safe, that our freedoms are protected, and I dare say from the time I've been in the Senate, Senator Chambliss is one of the most knowledgeable people in this body about the threats that we face, how we address those threats, and how we ensure that America remains safe. So I want to thank Senator Chambliss for his incredible leadership in this body, not only on the issue of how do we address ensuring that the detainees that are held that are very dangerous at Guantanamo Bay do not present additional threats to our country and to our allies, but on so many issues, ensuring that our intelligence officials have strong information and oversight to ensure that America remains protected. I rise in support of what my colleague from Georgia has just talked about. If we look at what's happening around the world, the recent developments with ISIS combined with the continuing threats that we face here at home from Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, it underscores the continuing need that we have for a military detention facility that is outside the United States of America that prevents enemy combatants who are at war with us from returning to the battle and allows us a secure location to gather intelligence to ensure that when we capture a member of Al-Qaeda or when we capture one of its affiliates that is in a position where the organization is threatening the United States of America, that we take the opportunity to ensure that there is a full and complete interrogation of those terrorists, to make sure that we know everything that they know, to ensure that we can prevent future attacks and that the United States of America is protected. So I would argue, as we look at what's happening around the world, the need for this detention facility actually has become more apparent. And yet what we have seen with the administration, as Senator Chambliss has so eloquently outlined, is that there has been a push. There was a political promise made in the president's campaign to close Guantanamo, and despite having a policy as to how we're going to handle the capture of these enemy combatants, one that he works with Congress on, and how we will ensure the full interrogation of these combatants to ensure information that we need to glean to protect our country, we've seen a rush to release people from Guantanamo that has been accelerated recently, as my colleague from Georgia talked about, where the Department of Defense has announced the transfer of 7 detainees fairly recently. And some of these detainees were reportedly assessed to be high risk. And there's also questions about what are the conditions that the countries that are taking these detainees are going to ensure that they don't return back into the fight, where we have direct evidence of a 29% re-entry rate, where those that have been released from Guantanamo, not just under this administration, but under prior administration, who are confirmed or suspected of having re-engaged in terrorism. There's nothing that must appall our troops more than to be on the battlefield, or our intelligence officials or our allies, to re-encounter a terrorist that we had safely detained at a detention facility at Guantanamo Bay, and to see that person again and to know that they continue to be a threat to the United States of America and to our interests. And so I would urge, I hope my colleagues, now more than ever, that it is important that we have that detention facility there that is safe, secure, and we can ensure that those that are captured that want to do us harm, members of Al-Qaeda, terrorist groups, that we can ensure that they can't get back in this battle against us. I specifically want to talk about the country of Yemen, because as a member of the Armed Services Committee, and Senator Chambliss supported this effort, we passed an amendment in the Senate Armed Services Committee that would have prohibited the transfer of Guantanamo detainees to the country of Yemen until December 31st of 2015. That provision was removed during the conference committee. As I'm being told, we won't have a chance to debate that issue on this Senate floor or to amend the defense authorization as it comes to the floor, because this is something that I cannot understand why this provision was removed and why the administration would want the ability to transfer Guantanamo detainees to Yemen. Because let's talk about what's happening in Yemen. Last May, President Obama, in my view unwisely, lifted the moratorium on detainee transfers to Yemen. Since that decision was made, between the date of the president's and the administration's order that we could potentially release detainees to Yemen, let me just outline what's happened in Yemen since then. That country has continued to be a place where there's instability, lack of government control, and in fact, between November 24th and December 2nd of 2014, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula reportedly claimed responsibility for 17 attacks in 8 Yemeni provinces. Now, I have a laundry list of very dangerous attacks that have occurred in Yemen. And one of the most troubling things that has occurred, as we think about those who are present in Guantanamo that are very, very dangerous individuals, a number of them are Yemenis. And if they were to be transferred back to the country of Yemen, for example, in February of 2014, militants attacked Yemen's main prison, killing 7 and enabling 29 inmates to escape, including 19 members who were convicted members of Al-Qaeda. So I really don't know why the administration would seek to transfer Guantanamo detainees to this country where there have been prison breaks, where there have been multiple instances of violent attacks by Al-Qaeda, and yet this provision got dropped from the defense authorization, even though it had the support of the Senate committee. And I'm very troubled by that. I'm troubled that we won't have an opportunity to debate that on the floor. And I would hope that the administration would look very closely at the record of what has occurred in Yemen since the president made the decision to end the moratorium on transfers to Yemen, because it is an incredible list of dangerous activities, prison breaks by members of Al-Qaeda. So there's no way that if we transfer someone from Gitmo to Yemen, that we can guarantee that those individuals won't get back in the fight, that they won't escape from any prison we put them in, because that country cannot assure their security. One thing that I wanted to talk about that I think is a very important issue as we look at this issue of the administration's rush to close Guantanamo, that is the issue of ISIS. There have been reports that a certain number of former Guantanamo detainees may be fighting with ISIS. We all saw with horror the acts of ISIS and how brutal they are, and the brutality that they have taken out on Americans, including one of my constituents. And we all know that ISIS is a group that the president himself has said we need to defeat. I have written the president and asked him about these reports. And in fact, I wrote a letter to President Obama and requested that all international transfers be suspended until we can know more about potential Guantanamo detainees that we've released who may be getting in the fight in support of ISIS. It was recently reported that one former Guantanamo detainee has pledged his allegiance to ISIS leader, the leader of ISIS, and is recruiting fighters for ISIS in northern Pakistan. If that is confirmed to be true, I think that we need to revisit not only ensuring that we aren't transferring dangerous detainees from Guantanamo to countries like Yemen and allowing them to be in a position to get back in the fight, but that we also are ensuring that we have a moratorium on transfers until we understand how many of these detainees may actually be joining ISIS and present a threat to us. This issue, as we look at the national security challenges we face right now, you have to reevaluate. I hope the President would reevaluate the campaign promise he made in light of the national security threats that we face. And now is not the time to be closing the facility at Guantanamo when we are presented with so many threats around the world, not only from Al-Qaeda, but from ISIS, and we need a secure facility to ensure that those who are there now, who are tremendously dangerous individuals, don't get back in the fight to continue to harm us and our allies, and also to ensure that if future enemy combatants are captured who are members of Al-Qaeda or its affiliates, that they have a secure place that they can be held and fully interrogated. I thank you, Mr. President, and I again want to thank my colleague from Georgia for his leadership on this issue and so many national security issues. And with that, I yield the floor.